Oh, it's still recording. Okay. Oh. What would you need to know before coming to Oxbridge? And why am I speaking like this and why am I spinning? The final thing you should probably know is that there is a lot of blah, 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 blah. Where are they going? Okay, I can't remember what I've already said. I don't know how to do an intro. Hey guys, so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I think you need to know before you apply to Oxbridge, so Oxford or Cambridge. So first of all, just a little disclaimer, I don't know too much about applying to Oxford because I'm at Cambridge, so most of this applies to both, but some of the words might be different and some of the specific details might be a bit wrong, but as a general vibe, you'll get the gist for both. First off, just a few details about me. So I'm currently a second year engineering student and I am at Newnham College, Cambridge. I initially applied to Queen's College, but I got pulled in the winter pool to Newnham. As for school, I went to Pates Grammar School in Cheltenham. So it's not private school, it is a state school, but it is selective. Okay, so the first thing to think of is that you do have a shorter deadline if you decide you want to apply to Oxford or Cambridge. So medics and vets will already have a shorter deadline, but Oxbridge just brings that deadline earlier as well. And you will also probably have an entrance exam. So I had the ENGAA, ENGAA exam, which was on 31st of October. Essentially everyone who has to do some sort of entrance exam will do them at the same time. They're really long and they're really hard, and you don't have to do well in them to get in. So if you have a look at any sort of past papers and go, what? At the content, don't stress too much. I'm pretty sure I got like 20% on mine and I'm still here. So do not stress. I know for Oxford, they place more weight on the entrance exams, so they cull it more, so they only take the top like 20% for interview, whereas Cambridge just get rid of the bottom 20%. So for Cambridge, the interview is the more crucial part, whereas for Oxford, it tends to more be getting an interview that's hard instead of actually getting an offer from the interview. That might not be true for every course, that's just the general vibes that I get. Another thing to look at before you decide to apply for Oxbridge is the course actually right for you? Because a lot of people go, oh, it's Oxbridge, it must be the best. But some courses are really weirdly structured or are structured in a way that doesn't suit everyone. So for example, the engineering course, the first 2 years are completely general. So if you already know you want to do a really specific type of engineering, it is not for you because you have to do all of the types of engineering for 2 years before you can specify. And I know for medics and vets, the course is more scientific than practical. So definitely have a look at the actual course structure and how it works and check that it is right for you, because it might be that a course at another uni is actually better suited to how you want to learn. And that's not saying that they aren't good courses. I really love it, but it is suited to certain types of people and certain ways of learning. And if you've already decided, for engineering at least, if you've already made a decision on what you want to become, you might find it kind of annoying that you have to do 8 different types of engineering for 2 years when you know you just want to do one. And the final thing is that don't worry about any sort of financial thing when you're trying to decide if you want to apply. There are tons and tons of grants and bursaries and loads of things like that to help you afford coming to Cambridge if you get in, but come from a lower income background or just don't have enough money as Cambridge sees fit, because that standard is a lot higher. The accommodation is more expensive, but don't be scared off by accommodation prices and college prices and things like that. There are lots of grants and stuff that you can apply for while you're here, and there'll be loads of students and staff that are more than willing to help you apply for things. So don't let the fact that you think you might not be able to afford it stop you from applying. You should still definitely apply, definitely give it a shot, and then if you get in, then you can start applying for the necessary grants and scholarships and bursaries and things like that. Just to reassure you, there is a Cambridge bursary which gets given to any student whose family income is below a certain point, and that's sort of on top of any student finance from Student Finance England. So any money from the government, that's like on top of that, and that just gets automatically assigned to people from the information they get from Student Finance. So Cambridge are well aware of the fact that it's expensive to be here, and they do automatically assign some bursaries, but others you have to apply for. But there's loads and loads of information about that online, and there will be loads if/when you get in. So there's no need to stress about that at this point. Just look at the course, look at how accommodation works, how living here works, look at all those sorts of details and decide whether you think it's right for you before deciding to apply. So section 2 is, what is it actually like to go to Cambridge? So I think the view a lot of people have are of the Hogwarts-esque colleges, big grand buildings, and everyone being geniuses, and no one goes out, everyone does all their work, everyone's very academic, top grades everywhere. That's not true for everyone. There are those sorts of people who are extremely academic and work day in, day out, and do top classes, top tripos, things like that. But that's not the case for the majority of people. Don't be afraid that you're not going to find people who are from a similar background to you. There's people of all race, gender, sexuality, other protected characteristics, like class, school background, everything like that. There's people of every single different background, and you will be able to find people who you get on with, who are similar to you. So myself, for example, although I'm smart, because I got into Cambridge, so I guess I must be, I'm not very academic. I don't want to sit and stare at books all day. I barely read. I much prefer to go outside and play sport or go out at night and like go for drinks, things like that. Neither of those things have happened too much because of COVID, but that's how I prefer to spend my time. So when I can, I spend the majority of my time playing sport, going out, seeing friends, things like that, and then just fit in the degree around it. So you really don't have to have your degree as your priority as much as some of the academics might try and convince you to. Your degree doesn't necessarily have to be your utmost priority. So once you've decided that you do want to come to Cambridge, don't let worries about the fact that you might not fit your stereotypical Cambridge student of extremely academic and loves their degree and loves everything about what they're learning about and always does this like super curricular stuff. If Cambridge give you an offer, or if Oxford give you an offer, it's because you're smart enough to be here, and it's because you've got good enough grades and you're the sort of person they want to be here. So just take it and run with it and enjoy your time. You really don't need to worry if you're not the Cambridge student or the Oxbridge student that you have set in your mind of what you think you need to be like. So don't try and be anyone else, just be you. And if that is you and then you get an offer from Oxbridge, amazing. If not, also amazing, because it just means you'll fit in better somewhere else. Don't try and force yourself to fit an Oxbridge student label. So yeah, what is it like to be here? So the main difference I've noticed, especially being in second year, is to do with accommodation. So the majority of colleges, you will live in college for the full 3 years of your degree. My degree is a 4-year degree and I can live in college in 4th year, but it's not the best accommodation, so I'll probably live out in 4th year. And that's very different to at other unis. So at most other unis, you will live in halls or uni accommodation for your 1st year, and then you'll get a house with mates in your 2nd year and 3rd year, and then you're not in uni accommodation. So that has been a big difference this year, is that I'm still in a college room, and I'm still living in Unum, whereas a lot of people at other unis are living in houses that they had to get together and sort out. So there are kind of two sides of the coin with this one. Is it's a lot more convenient that your accommodation is just kind of set for 3 years, as you will be in a college room. All you have to do is pick the room or ballot for a room, things like that. So you just like pick where you want to be in college. That's different between colleges, but you usually get to pick where you want to be in college. Some colleges do have accommodation out of college that people use, but it's still very much like you have a room in a college or in a college building. So yeah, it's very convenient and it's very easy, but it does mean that you don't get as much freedom. So obviously at other unis where you find a house, you have to find a house. So you have to get together with people that you want to live with. You have to find a group of people you want to live with. You have to find a house you all agree on, and you have to put a successful inquiry in, I think. And you have to pay rent and all those sorts of things. So it's more consistent and convenient to live in college accommodation for 3 years, but it does mean you get less freedom. You can choose to live out. Most colleges will let you live out if you choose to, but it just tends to be a bit more difficult than if you wanted to live out at another uni. Some colleges do let you ballot in groups, so you'll be able to get together with people who you find in 1st year and then ballot together to be near each other in 2nd year. So there are differences for the different colleges. So you'll have to look into that, or just, if you don't care too much, just let it be and see what happens when you get here. Another difference is how you're taught. So most unis have lectures, labs for subjects that have labs, so like science subjects, and then some sort of small group teaching. But at other unis, small group means like 5, 6 to up to about 15, 20, going over some sort of work or examples paper or things like that. Whereas at Cambridge and at Oxford, you have supervisions or tutorials at Oxford. So supervisions are usually 1 to 3 students to 1 teacher or 1 supervisor. Supervisors can be academics, they can sometimes even be your lecturer. Sometimes they're just PhD students, so there's a huge range of people that you can get to supervise you, and that just gets sorted out by college. So you still have lectures as you would at any other uni, with everyone in your subject, but you also have supervisions where you will have done some work and you'll go along, and it's different for different subjects. But for example, for engineering, I'll do some questions, I'll go along and ask them any questions I have about the work I've done, or they'll go through it and highlight points that they know are important that I need to know for when I do an exam. So they're really useful. They feel scary, but they're really not once you get used to them. So they feel like very intense and one-on-one, but as soon as you get used to having a supervisor and the fact that a supervisor isn't quite like a teacher, so it's not as like teacher-student, it's more like you're more on the same level. Obviously you're not, because they know a lot and you probably don't know that much about the subject. And you still like show respect to them and everything, but it's more like, so like I will genuinely go into supervision and be like, yeah, I have no idea what's going on, please can you explain it? And that's fine. Different supervisors would react in different ways. So the first supervision with a new supervisor is always a bit more tense than any others. but they're just there to help you. They're more than willing to answer any questions. And although the setup feels similar to an interview, they're not trying to interview you. They don't want you to have known everything already, because then that would be a really boring supervision if you just went in and were like, yeah, I'm good, I know everything already. Then they're not going to have anything else to say, are they? So they're more than happy to answer questions and stuff. And then obviously the main difference between Oxbridge and most other unis is the fact that we have colleges. So when you apply, you can either pick a college to apply to, which is what most people do, or you can make an open application, which means you're happy to be at any college. And what will happen is, if you get an interview, that your interview will be at that college. So I interviewed at Queen's, and then they decide whether they want you or whether they would recommend you for the pool or whether they wouldn't. So if they don't, then you haven't got in. If they recommend you for the pool, that means other colleges can take a look at your application and a look at like your interview scores that you get from the interview you've done and see whether they want you. So basically Newnham had a look and were like, she's not too bad, and they took me. So that's how I ended up at Newnham. And most of your supervisions are organised by college. So especially in first year, when more courses, it's different for different courses because there are more options in different courses, so it's harder to organise supervisions because you have to be in supervisions for every paper you're going to take. If you can do a wild choice of options and everyone's doing different things, then you'll be in supervisions with people from other colleges, and you might be in supervisions at other colleges or at the department. But my supervisions for first and second year were all meant to be in college. Obviously, some of them were online, but they're all meant to be in college. So you also have, through college, a DOS and a tutor. These are called different things, I believe, at Oxford, but I don't know what those words are. So your DOS is Director of Studies, that's what it's short for, and they're basically in charge of all your academic stuff. So you have DOS meetings where they just check you're coping okay. If you miss a lab or you miss anything and you need to catch up or you need to not be penalised for it, then you go to your DOS and you ask them. So essentially they're in charge of sorting out any academic difficulties, and they're also in charge of helping you with pastoral stuff that's related to academia sometimes. So sometimes people feel more comfortable going to their DOS than their tutor. They're just kind of someone there to help you. They're usually a fellow at your college, but they change year on year. So your first year DOS will usually be different to your second year DOS, and it'll change and it'll keep changing. Then you have your tutor. So your tutor is your pastoral stuff. So your tutor looks after you and your mental health. They're who you'll go to if you're having any issues, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you've got financial issues. So you apply for a lot of bursaries through your tutor or with the help of your tutor. They're basically who to go to if you're having any issues other than, I can't do the work, it's too hard. So they will usually meet with you once a term-ish. It really varies tutor on tutor, let alone college on college. So this information is very estimated. But they'll meet with you and they'll just check you're okay. Another thing that everyone always talks about is the workload. So everyone has a massive expectation that they're going to be working day and night and not going to get any sleep and not be able to do anything because there's too much work. And I think the workload really varies subject on subject. So if you go online and you have a look at sample timetables, so last year's timetables and this year's timetables, I think, are like publicly available on websites. So you can go have a look at roughly how many lectures you'll have on each day. And then, so for engineering, I have lots of contact hours. I'm not even going to try and count up how many lectures I have, but I would have, on average, 2 or 3 supervisions a week, but they come in line with what you're learning. So At the beginning, you won't have as many supervisions for me because you haven't learned enough to do the questions that you then need to go over in the supervision. For subjects that are essay-based, they tend to not have a supervision in the first week, but then they write an essay either every week. It's not every week for every subject, but they write an essay every week from then on, including 1 week after, because you won't learn anything in week 1, but you'll need to go over the stuff in week 8, so you'll need a supervision like the week after that. I would say it's manageable, and it depends what your priorities are. So if your priorities are getting a first, then it's going to take a lot of work, unless you're a genius. And then if in that case, if it doesn't take you a lot of work, fair play. But for most people, it takes a fair amount of work to get a first, especially as we go into exam term in Easter. You're going to have to put in a lot of work and a lot of practice to get those top grades, unless your subject comes really naturally to you. If your priorities are more just enjoying uni and learning and getting a degree along the way, then you don't have to spend all your time working. You can very easily manage it. So I do a lot of sport, and I spend a lot of time not working because I'm doing sport, travelling to sport, and because I like to see my friends, I like to go out, and I can still survive a term. So that brings on nicely to the structure of the term, because it is a wacky one. So you do only have 8-week long terms. So that is a very short term. So it's a very short time to make it through, to get to the end. And then you have some longer holidays. So most people some people are just like gods, and they manage to like keep completely on top of their lives throughout term, and then they're absolutely fine at the end. No idea how they do that. Most people go through term surviving and doing enough work to survive and learning stuff, then doing the work for supervision, doing the supervision, then essentially forgetting what they've learned and moving on to the next topic. And then by the time you get to the end of the 8 weeks, you recover because you've probably not slept enough. And then you go over what you've learned and you consolidate things that you learned at the beginning because you probably won't remember them. And that's kind of how I do it. So I don't find there's enough time during term, if I want to do all my sport, to consolidate what I'm learning if I don't get it the first time. So I'll work on it enough so that I get it enough to learn the next bit, but I won't necessarily thoroughly understand it or understand it enough to do an exam. So now obviously I'm revising and having to make notes on everything and fully understand everything so that I can then do past papers and stuff. And I hope this has been helpful to anyone who's actually watched this far. If you have any particular questions or topics that you want me to address in another video, feel free to let me know and I'll get onto it. And whatever you do decide to do, best of luck with it, and I hope it goes well for you. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, I'm always happy to help.